Americans are afraid of their government, and for good reason. Government agencies have taken extraordinary control of our land, food, home, and our money. What is even more frightening is the coercive control the government is taking over our children, the most precious relationship we have on this planet. Education, medical care, and even possession of your child is under the close scrutiny of agencies that monetize our children. Connie Reguli and Cynthia Becker are bringing you real life stories of the trauma and destruction of an agency meant to protect children from harm, CPS. Child Protective Services operates in every state and has the power to take your children on anonymous allegations even without investigating and without giving you a day in court. Let's get started.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm Cynthia, and I'm one of the hosts on Exposing CPS Families Tell All. A quick intro from me is that I am a mother of two whose children were illegally and wrongfully taken. And after 2 years of fighting, I did get my kids back. And now I love just being part of this community and helping families. Use their voice to tell their CPS horror stories. This is Brenda Johnson. Brenda is also a mom who has a CPS story that she's going to share with us today. Good morning, Brenda.
Hello.
Hi. And then Connie, I'm going to leave you to do your intro because I can never use the words to be able to explain how amazing you are.
Just quickly, I am excited to be able to help families tell their stories and kind of review what has happened to them. I've worked with families for 3 decades all across the state of Tennessee, as well as other states and across this country. And I really started reaching out across the country so we could be able to look at the patterns that were happening and see what was happening family to family to family. Because as an attorney who was handling individual cases, I thought surely this isn't happening to everybody. And then as I began to expand that and work with other people, I did a radio show back in 2015, 16, where I would take a case and I was taking them from all over the country, allowing families to explain what was happening to them. And again, we were exposing that and showing these patterns. So I am so happy that we're going to be able to work together and go forward. I know that you've done a series for a long time, just kind of helping families have that platform to tell their stories. But hopefully with my ability to join now, I can maybe sort of unsort some of the events that happen, maybe give parents some suggestions on how to deal with these people. And, we can just help educate people because that's what we really have to do at this point.
Absolutely. I love it. So let's jump right in. Brenda, can you give us a little intro on you and where you're from and how many children you have?
My name is Brenda. I'm a single mom. I live out in Rutherford County in Tennessee. I have 3 children, as you can see behind me on the picture. My son, he's 17 now. My daughter, she's 14. And my youngest, he's turned 2. And I'm just trying to bring awareness as well. And I'm grateful to be on you all's show and to be here today as a guest.
I just so that people know, I interviewed Brenda a little while ago, a few days or maybe a week or so ago, and her story is sad, just as many others, and it blows me away that I've been doing this for years now, and it still shocks me.
Yeah.
So, Brenda, when did CPS first get involved in your life?
Okay, and I'm
CPS
just going to say, Cynthia, hold on one second. Cynthia, when you are not speaking, will you mute your mic because
Yes.
we're getting a little bit of feedback. I know I've got an earpiece in, but we're getting a little feedback from you. So, and I'm sorry, Brenda, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, let's take a few minutes and you just kind of explain your story, sort of as it just really just kind of that impact of how it unfolded for you. And then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to ask you some specific questions. Haven't already have now some good information on your case, and I appreciate you sharing that with me, so that people can really grasp what happened to you and your efforts now to try to unwind that. But yeah, go ahead and just kind of explain that the best you can.
CPS came in my life on March the 4th, a Saturday. My twin sister and I were having a disagreement, so it became quite heated. And I was asking her to leave my home, and she refused to leave my home. The police came out several times that day, and they were asking her to leave as well. And several different sets of officers came out. My sister normally knew that I had a warrant out for my arrest for truancy before I did. She offered that information to the last set of officers that were at my home. The officer knew that they came out for a domestic dispute. So he had to even go so far as to call his lieutenant to see what protocol should he follow, letting them know that I had an active warrant. And so since I had an active warrant, I was taken in and booked under the truancy.
Okay, so right now I'm going to stop you. Again, I have a little bit more information on your case, so I want to talk about a few things you've already talked about. So let's talk about this active warrant. So you're saying this is a truancy warrant, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, your children, you didn't talk about how old your children were. So, describe for us a little bit about your children, how old they are, what grade they're in, male or female, if you could do that, please.
My oldest child was 16 at the time, and he's in high school, the 11th grade. My middle daughter, she's 14, and my youngest was about 21 months at the time. And so I was booked and taken down to the detention center for truancy.
Okay. All right. Now, let's talk about that a second because I also used to be a prosecuting attorney. Truancy is a Class C misdemeanor. Okay. It is a Class C misdemeanor. That means that is supposed to be served by citation. They are never supposed to take somebody and book them and put them through the booking process for a Class C misdemeanor. So, right there, that's error number one. Okay, go ahead.
I was inside the detention center, had got fingerprinted and photo, and then that's when a DCS caseworker came in to speak with me, and she was asking if my kids can go to Memphis with my twin sister, the one that I had the dispute with. And I was trying to explain to her, no, that my kids didn't need to be taken to Memphis because they were going to be letting me out on my own recognizance. And she told me, no, I wasn't getting out. So the caseworker that came to the detention center, she left for about an hour or two, and then she came back and she kept asking me the same thing. You know, if my kids can go to Memphis with my sister, and I told her no again. So I offered the alternative parents, the dad's information to the caseworker. She wrote it down on a sticky note, and then after that, she came back and I didn't hear anything else from them, and then they were releasing me. I was in jail, I think, for 3 or 4 hours, if I can say, because I didn't have a phone or anything. And then they just opened the doors and told me to get out, and I walked about 7 miles home.
So, was this during the day? What time of day was this?
Going back to look at a report, I think I was arrested about 4:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, so it was the afternoon. We've already identified you should have been served with a citation. They took you through booking and then released you. So, of course, again, it's a Class C misdemeanor, so there wasn't any type of bond. They knew better than to try to put a bond on you. It's so ridiculous. All right, so am I understanding this right that the CPS worker was asking you if your sister could take your children to Memphis?
Yeah, she came and asked twice.
Wow. Okay. All right. All right. So then how did they, because we know you're here because they took your children. So let's go on now to that process. How did that happen?
Um, Finding out when I went to court on March the 6th, that's when I found out from the summons being hand delivered to me because I had received a text message from that caseworker that came to the detention center. She was notifying me at about, I think, 9 or 10 something on a text to say you have to be at court at 1. So when I walked into the lobby of the courthouse, I was served a summons and it was outlining in a petition the reason why my kids were taken.
Okay, so we didn't talk about your kids being taken though. So when you got out of jail, you were put in jail on March the 4th, right?
Yes.
So when you went through that booking process and you walked 7 miles home, were your children already gone?
Yes, when I arrived home, took me almost 3 hours to walk home without shoes and no coat, and it was cold at night. So when I arrived home, I was very hoarse, and my skin had started turning purple because it was extremely cold. And when I walked up in my driveway, my front door was wide open, and I walked in, and that's when I seen my twin sister, our mother, her ex-husband, and her new husband in my home, plus the 3 children that they had together. And they were all in my house. And I came in and was asking the whereabouts of my children, and they weren't home.
So did they tell you the children had been taken by DCS?
No, they didn't tell me. My sister was trying to apologize to me, but I didn't want to hear it. I said, "Can y'all just leave?" Because the officers told her to leave earlier that morning at about 10 when the officers had came out, 10 a.m. And she kept refusing to leave. And I said, "Why don't you just leave?" So that's when I picked up the phone to call the police and let them know you all asked her to leave about 12 hours ago, and now she's still here.
Okay, but how did you find out the kids were in foster care?
Right.
They weren't here. And then at the detention center, when the caseworker came the second time, she told me that the kids were going to go into foster care since I refused to let them go to Memphis with my sister. And I asked her for her contact information because unknowingly, I'm thinking I'm going to get them when I was let go that night back home. And so she didn't want to give me her contact information. And that's when one of the correctional officers stepped in and said, "You have to give her the information so she can know the whereabouts of her kids." So she put her card on the table for me, her business card.
Oh my gosh. All right. So at some point they talked to your children, was that after they had taken them? Or were they in your home when they had talked to them?
I'm not sure when they talked to him because once the officers were told to book me, transport me to the detention center, when I was leaving out in cuffs out of my home, that's when I seen my sister in the driveway talking to one set of officers. My daughter was upstairs. My son was in the house with the children, and my mother was sitting in the car. But I saw my twin sister talking to an officer in the driveway.
Okay, but as far as when the CPS worker actually talked to your children, you're not sure. I mean, we know it happened before March the 6th because the CPS worker alleged that your children said some pretty devious things, but you don't know when she actually talked to them? But you don't know when she talked to them.
I don't know exact time or date or when she talked to him. I've never known when. So.
Now, also, so that is March, and just for everybody, so everybody's clear, that's March of this year, 2023, right? Right?
I think there's a lot of lag.
Is there some delay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me, Brenda?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, this is March 2023 when this happened, and we're having this discussion now in August. So we're April, May, June, July, August. So we're 5 months that your children have been gone, and you and I've had some discussions about some of these allegations. But you've had a couple different attorneys, right? You had a court-appointed attorney and you hired an attorney. Now, over this 5-month period, have either of those attorney attorneys obtained the DCS records, the CPS records?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So you don't have any, you don't know whether they recorded these interviews with their children. You don't know whether they wrote it down and made notes on it in TFAX. All you know is what the CPS worker put in the petition that she swore under oath and then filed against you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I know the CPS worker, and let's see, what is that chick's name? What's her name? Was that
Hey, Smith.
Kelsia Smith?
Chelsea.
Chelsea Smith? Okay. But it's spelled weird. It's Chelsea, Khesea, right? Chelsea Smith with the Department of Children's Services. So we know she also represented to the court when she filed that initial proceeding that they had made reasonable efforts for the children to stay in your home. And she actually has to, by law, she has to do this whole entire affidavit about the reasonable efforts that she made so the children could stay in your home. So I know based on our discussions, one of the things she said in there is that you told her you didn't want to deal with the kids anymore. Did you tell her anything like that?
No, ma'am.
And what kind of efforts did she make for the children to be able to stay in the home, knowing that, because I'm assuming she didn't complete this until after she had already come to the jail in Rutherford County and spoken to you, and where you had told her they were going to let you out, right? You had already told her that. Did you not have anybody who could come and pick you up, or did you just not have a way to call them?
I didn't have my phone or numbers to call anybody to pick me up.
Okay. All right. So when they put you in handcuffs and took you, they didn't even allow you to take your phone?
I had it in my hand, and the officer took it and put it on the table. And then that's how my keys and my phone were left on the table. And they walked me out because they were telling me to step outside so they can talk to me first. But I already knew that when they were both coming behind me to try to grab my arms, I already knew from, seeing it done on TV cops that they were going to arrest me. And so that's when I was like, you all can arrest me. And I put my arms out and I walked outside.
Wow. Okay, well, let's move on because there's a whole lot more to this that we want to make sure we cover. So you go to court and you go on the 6th, and that's the first time you ever see the petition, right?
Yes.
And then the judge gives you an attorney right there, right? While you're standing right there, supposedly. You get an attorney that day. And that now the children have already been gone a couple days. Under Tennessee law, you're supposed to have what's called a 72-hour hearing. Mm-hmm. And so here you are, you're just being served with your documents. You were just told, did she call you or did she text message you?
The attorney?
No, the person who told you to come to court.
She text messaged me.
So you get a text message from a DCS worker that says come to court, right?
Yes.
And that's when you get served. You don't know where your children are. You walk in there and somebody says, this is your attorney. Are you allowed on that day to have a full evidentiary hearing on all of these allegations made against you?
No, ma'am.
So you basically leave court that day with nothing, right? You don't have a hearing. You don't have your kids. Were your kids at court?
No, ma'am, they weren't.
So did anybody say anything about when you need to see your kids, talk to your kids, tell you where your kids are? Did anybody give you that information?
Earlier that morning, when I asked to speak to Chelsea's supervisor, because I wanted to file a complaint just from how she was treating me in the detention center, and I didn't know the whereabouts of my kids, and I thought they were going to come back home that night. And I went to Rutherford County Department of Children's Services to ask for her superiors. And so the receptionist gave me that information. And I believe I spoke to Christina Moody and was trying to file a complaint, but the lady said she was the regional director over 5 counties and she didn't have time to listen to me. And so that's when after that, I was getting a text message from Chelsea to be at court. And so I asked Christina Moody, I said, will I get my kids back? And I think I even texted Kelsey to ask her, how do I get my kids back? She said they'll let you know all of that in court, which they didn't.
Okay, go ahead, Cynthia.
Connie, I was going to ask if, in a quick nutshell, because you're in Tennessee as well, can you tell us how this should have happened? Like the fact that there were adults at the home when the children were removed, and about like a visitation that should have been scheduled, whether before court or after court, and then, like you mentioned, the 72-hour hearing that should have happened.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what should have happened, it seems to be an elusive thing because, they don't follow, appear to follow anything. And what you're hearing Miss Johnson tell you is sadly something that is occurring. So, I mean,
Mhm.
first of all, yes. I mean, they came to well, again, number one, Miss Johnson should have never been taken for booking. It's a truancy is a class C misdemeanor. It is not an outstanding warrant. It's to be served by citation only, where the officer actually writes a citation just then and there and say, here's your citation and appear in court on this day on your citation. So taking her to be booked, but then once she was booked, I mean, her sister was in the home. It sounds like her mother was there.
Mhm.
That certainly even her mother could have been able to have at least a temporary care of the children, and just to allow that, allow her to go through the booking process. I mean, I'm just, and Miss Johnson and I have talked about the truancy issue as well, and these things that happened a couple months before that in February. And indeed, she was having some issues, with her children, her two older children in school, and so somehow she was flagged over this. When I don't know how her sister found out about it, but apparently when her sister knew about that or talked to them about the truancy warrant, that kind of flagged her and put a target on her. So yeah, I mean, definitely they should have left the children with an adult. She should have gone through the booking process and been able to return home to her kids. So Brenda, the next thing, I mean, it's critical. The the next requirement that the state has under state law is to set up a perm plan meeting, and they're required under law to set that up within 30 days. So from the time the children were removed on March the 4th, that would have meant by April the 3rd, they should have called you into a meeting, you and your attorney should have given you proper notice, because they're also required to give, and I believe it's 5 days notice on a perm plan. Typically, what they're supposed to do is mail you a letter, make sure they have the right address, which now we know maybe they didn't even have the right address, but they're to mail you a letter of a notification of a perm plan and give you 5 days notice. So did you get that? Did you get a perm plan meeting with DCS prior to April the 3rd?
I wouldn't call it a perm plan meeting. I would call it a meeting just because the guardian ad lin was telling them she was going to file a motion for lack of effort because they weren't doing anything on the case. And she was telling them they had to be compliant by April the 3rd. So that's why on April the 3rd, they threw something together, but a perm plan wasn't established or created on that date. They just did it to say that they did it.
Okay, because I know in you and our discussions and kind of just flipping through and seeing what these dates were. I mean, I didn't see any type of documentation that they had a perm plan meeting. So did you get any type of report or documentation that they had actually had that meeting?
I have 60 emails from the first caseworker that was on my case, Shanine Jackson, and from the guardian ad lin, CASA, and everyone else, and my public defender at the time, Kathy Baker Bowen. We have 60 emails of them trying to correspond with the foster mom and myself, and all of us trying to come up with a date. But when Betsy Crow is the guardian ad lin, when she told them you all have to be in compliance, that's when they threw it together on that last day.
Okay, but after it was over, you should have gotten something from DCS. You should have gotten a report, a perm plan, case notes or something. Did you get anything from that meeting?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so all right, so then you are in court. I think hang on here. I made some notes about your dates. Um, So you go to court on March the 6th, but you go back to court. It looks like a hearing was set for March the 21st. And when you went to court on March the 21st, did anything happen on that day?
It was, I believe, for truancy. And my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, they had truancy against her as well, but they immediately dropped it from her. And when the prosecuting attorney, I think he's the assistant DA, he told me he wasn't going to drop it for me because he didn't like me. So he said, you need to get an attorney and come back with an attorney. So he reset it.
Okay, because another thing that I noticed about your case is you've got two different courts. You've got the magistrate, you've got what's his name? Magistrate, right? No, what's his name?
Ray White, I believe.
Ray White. You've got the magistrate, Ray White, and then you've got the judge, Travis Lampley. And as we were talking about it, it looked like the judge, Travis Lampley, who is a new judge for Rutherford County, that the truancy went in front of him, and the DNN appears to be set before the magistrate. Am I right about that, or do you even understand how that's working?
At first, Judge Lampley was over both cases, and I was telling my public defender I felt like he was being partial and he needed to recuse himself and not proceed over both. So when I went to my preliminary hearing, that's when I saw that the magistrate was over the DN case and Judge Lampley was over the truancy, but the prosecuting attorney for the DN case was wanting the case to go back before Judge Lampley. She kept asking that on June the 22nd, Laura Wood.
Okay, so by this time, by March the 21st, and it looks like there was an order to move that hearing to May the 23rd, right?
I can't recall off the top of my head, so I don't want to say anything on that.
Okay, well, it looked like when I was looking at just the orders to reset that they had moved a hearing set on 3/21 to May 23. So it looks like you really didn't even get much done on that day. Um, so
Oh yeah, no, Connie, I do remember. I remember John Cameron, the assistant DA on my truancy, took me into a little side room and he said, "Oh, aren't you the one that has the DCS case?" And he said, "Don't answer that." And then he said, "If it was anybody but you, don't answer that." And then he was trying to get me to take a plea deal, and I went and signed some papers for the plea deal because he had the attendance officer right there, Gwen Dyer, that brought the truancy against me. And he told me, if you go before the judge, we're going to arrest you because I'm going to just put her in the stand and we're going to arrest you. So I remember that date because they took me in a room and then I told him I wasn't signing anything. I wasn't being treated fairly. And I was trying to explain to him when we were out in Georgia in January when my mother got sick, the school at their own discretion with the administration, according to their policy, they can give my kids their schoolwork. The counselor even offered for me to enroll them in virtual online school, which I did the same day that I was told, January the 10th, to prevent truancy. And to also, I put the daughter in paid private school. And he was like, "Well, you're coming back with an attorney. You can't talk without an attorney." So he told me not to talk. And he gave me some paper to reset. And he told me to go into the court. And that's when the judge Lampley reset the case to May.
Okay. I'm glad you told me that because I think you had mentioned it before and I had forgotten it. So the issue with the children in school in January had to do with your mother being sick and you guys going to Georgia to help take care of her. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
And so when you and in spite of you enrolling them in online school and enrolling them in a private school, they still did a truancy on you?
The lady, Gwen Dyer, got upset because I emailed her, and my twin sister at the time emailed her, and she was like, "Why are you denying her educational rights, her violating her civil human rights?" And it's like the same day she got that email, she went down to, I guess, Sharon, whoever, to try to get the warrant, but they didn't obtain it or sign it on January the 10th. She waited 20 days later, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is very interesting because actually, I don't want to get diverted from your story, but I have somebody else who just reached out to me yesterday in another county where they are attacking the parents for truancy and threatening to take their kids away. So that's another, that's for another day, but it has to do with the same thing. It has to do with their objections to online and homeschooling, which has to do with them getting federal money for the number of days kids are in school. But we're that is we will we'll deal with that at another level because I really want to kind of get through this whole process of what happened with you. So then you go to court on, it looks like the May that, oh no, in the meantime, so on May the 14th, there is a foster care review board meeting. Is that also when did they finally have a perm plan, or have you not had that perm plan yet? The
They
meeting.
sent, we had a meeting. I know now they had one May the 11th for the perm plan with my attorney, and my older sister attended. And I didn't be aware of the perm plan, like the paperwork, until the morning, June 22nd, of the preliminary hearing. And last week they sent it to me, Nabrea Howard, the DCS team lead.
Okay, so you didn't get proper notice. Now I think it's 5 days. You're supposed to have 5 days notice. Did you get 5 days notice of that perm plan meeting?
As I can recall, I don't get the advance notices, so I would say no. They tell you either the day before or
Okay.
like the weekend before the weekend.
Well, and I noticed you also shared with me that last Friday afternoon on August the 3rd at 3:55 p.m., the bare end of the day, you received an email from DCS to set a perm plan meeting for Tuesday, which would only be, I mean, of course, it's the weekend, but that is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I mean, that's 4 days, but it is the weekend. And then they set it for noon, which is really 3.5 days. So that and we'll come back and we'll talk about that a little bit. But it's critical that people understand that they're supposed to have 5 days notice on these meetings so that they can be available, or they can be there by Zoom, or they can have it recorded. All right. So then on the 14th of May, there's a foster care review board. Now, did you get notice of that meeting?
No, ma'am.
So you got no notice. And of course, because you didn't get notice, you didn't go to that one as well, right?
No, I didn't see him.
Now, did they take your kids to those meetings? Do you know?
I guess looking at the paperwork, when I got my file from the court clerk, I see that the foster parents attended, the caseworker at the time, who's now terminated, the team leader, I believe, Gail and Casa, and the people that was over the board, but I don't believe my kids attended the review board neither.
So I noticed that, and we talked about a couple comments that they said your kids made to the foster care review board meeting, but it's kind of hard to tell if the children were actually there. So you're not sure if if your children were actually there for the foster care review board meeting. Is that right?
It has it checked on the paper that I'm looking at right now. It says that the mother and father are non-participant, but the child and other participants, but it doesn't say which child.
Okay. Well, I think there's a separate foster care review summary for every child, right? So I think it's checked for all the children. All right. So by May the 4th or May the 14th, which is when they're having this, we're now over 2 months that you've been separated from your children. Has DCS provided you any services?
No, ma'am. Kelsey, I keep saying her name wrong, Miss Smith, the worker that got them removed, she keeps going before the courts and to DCS saying that I refuse services, but I was never offered any services from DCS.
And what about visitation with your children?
I don't have visits. They've been gone since March the 4th, and I've seen the 14-year-old, and now he's 2 on April the 11th. I haven't seen my 16-year-old, but now he's 17. And then I saw the 14-year-old on June the 5th after allegation between her and the foster mom.
Okay, so you've had one visit with one child. So that was, did you say June the 5th?
I had a visit with the 14 and now the 2-year-old April the 11th. And on June the 5th, I had a visit with the 14-year-old.
Okay, hold on. I want to mark that here. Hold on here just a second. Okay,
Wow.
so just so I have it in my record. Go ahead, Cynthia.
While you're marking that, was there ever um having the children placed with a family member or friend as an option? Ever?
No, ma'am. We asked for DCS to do that several times, and they always made an excuse and kept saying they couldn't do it. And we would ask them why, we would email them. And then for my older sister, they kept saying because she lived in Georgia, and she even offered to put them in private school, online school that's for their county to let them work at home because she works from home. The dads wanted to get the kids. They didn't offer a kinship placement.
So you actually gave them at least two sources, your older sister and then so you have the older two have a different father, right? Is he the one who offered to take them?
Not at the time, the babies, the little one, his dad offered, his whole entire family offered.
Okay.
And your mom as well, right? And
Not my
even
mom at the time because she had went back into a coma, so she wouldn't be able to
um,
get the kids.
But you're saying your baby's father also had some family members?
He has his mom. He has his cousin that's a pastor. I went to the church on March the 5th and talked to the pastor, talked to the moms, the aunties. He has a large family. We all cried in church and they said, well, bring the baby here. Try to get the baby. And DCS claimed that they called the dads and they said they didn't want to be involved. But they told me that DCS never called them.
They told you that? When did they tell you that?
DCS said it under oath. The one that got the kids removed, Miss Smith, she said it at the preliminary hearing June the 22nd. And I've heard that from my private attorney and the public defender that the dads didn't want to be involved. And
so you're saying that she said that in court?
She said it under oath.
And you said on the 22nd. Oh gosh. Okay. About dad. Yeah, you really need those recordings of those hearings so we can find out all the things that they've said. All right. So I want to keep moving forward. So here we are now in June 22nd, you had a hearing, and that was really what was considered your preliminary hearing, right?
Yes.
And that was with the magistrate, Ray White. And that was where, so when they have a preliminary hearing, there's a couple things that they're supposed to do. They are supposed to make findings of fact related to the reasons for removal. I mean, findings of fact, not just like we think there's reason for removal. They are supposed to also find that it's the least drastic alternative to put the children in foster care. They're supposed to make that. And they're also supposed to make findings related to why it's contrary to the welfare of the children that they not be returned home. So I want you to tell me, to your best recollection, what happened on June the 22nd in court?
June the 22nd, Chelsea Smith, the assessment worker that got the kids taken, she was the first to testify. And she changed her story, of course, from what was said in the summons. But she was so adamant that I told her I didn't want my kids. She told them I was mental. So my private paid attorney Michael Hollins, asked her, what makes you think Miss Johnson is mental? And what degree do you hold to state that? She told him she has a business administration degree. And she said, because I offered information that wasn't asked of me when I was in a detention center. And so she didn't ever state specifically what I offered, but she said I said something about my twin sister. And I was just letting her know I didn't want them to go to Memphis for the reasons my twin sister doesn't have a place to live of her own. She doesn't have a job. And she's also on the FBI terrorist watch list for non-affiliation with terrorists. So that's why the lady went to court and said I was mental for those reasons. But I said, why would you take them from me and I'm being brought in only on truancy, and you want to send them to Memphis with someone that's like this that doesn't have custody of her own kids? So that's when she was so adamant that I told her I don't want the kids. I don't want to be a mom anymore. And the judge was sitting there just leaned back, eating it up.
So they offered to send your children to Memphis with your sister, who's on the FBI watch list. Is that what you said?
Yes.
And who lost custody of her own kids, and she doesn't have a place to stay.
Yes.
But they denied looking at sending them to your older sister and your youngest child's father and his family members and extended family who offered to help.
Yes.
Oh gosh. Okay, so June 22nd, and you have that court hearing, and then you are and now you've been totally cut off from your kids. As of June 22nd, you haven't had it, you have phone calls, you have anything, you have any supervised contact with the children?
DCS attempted to call, I believe, twice for the 14-year-old, but that's after they removed her for reporting alleged abuse by the foster parents. And so they were calling me at work, and I didn't think much of it because I know when DCS call, it's always miss or they misconstrue your words. So I didn't answer. And I think Brooke Moore was the caseworker at the time because the first caseworker, Shanine Jackson, was terminated after April the 11th with the kids visit. I reported the abuse. My 14-year-old tried to report the abuse and nothing was done. So it prompted me to go up the chain of command to DCS all the way up to the Human Relations Department. I spoke to the director of Human Relations, Tammy Felton, and my public defender told me to stop calling DCS because whatever I'm saying, they're recording me. She said, don't yell at them, don't talk to anybody, just talk to me. But I also text my public defender. She told me to talk to the kids' attorney. And I told all these people, I went to Vanderbilt Children's Pediatric Clinic in Smyrna and told them about the abuse. I went to the little 2-year-olds daycare, kinder care at Old Fortress Parkway, Fortress Boulevard.
Okay, hold on
Hold
a
on.
second. After you
And
talk
told
for a
them
little
about
while.
the abuse.
Hold
I
on.
confronted the father.
Hold on just a second. After you talk for a little while, it gets a little this is one thing about just the connections and stuff. So if we shut you down, it's probably because you're starting to break up. So, all right. So I want to back up a little bit. So you went to, so they've got your baby in a kinder care program, in a daycare,
Yes.
and you went and you talked to them about what was happening.
About the baby was having seizures because allegedly the foster mom was putting him in dark closets for him to scream because he was looking for me, his mother. And my daughter was trying to report that. And then also the foster mom allegedly putting her hands on the 14-year-old, snatching her clothes off in front of the foster dad, her brother, another foster child that's 14, and their biological child. And they're all males. And so that's why my daughter, I believe, was separated because after she reported that and I confronted them, they said she was the op. Like I told Cynthia on the last show, she's the opposition.
Wow. So your daughter reported abuse. Did she report it to her foster care worker? Do you know?
She told me that whenever the foster care workers came, the foster parents, their attorney, everybody's right there. She never felt she can confide in anybody because she saw the wrongdoing from her seeing them do other things. And she didn't feel comfortable reporting it to any of them because she never had that a long time, or she said she felt like she couldn't trust them.
And so now, where is she now?
The last I've heard, DCS told me they didn't know where she was at. She was somewhere, is what they tell me.
What?
Somewhere in Nashville, or she's somewhere.
DCS can't even tell you where your daughter's located anymore?
No.
And when is the last time you saw her? Was June the 5th?
June the 5th at a park.
Was she in court on June the 22nd?
No. They wouldn't allow her to come. They told me my 17, well, he was 16 at the time. They told me he wasn't going to come to court neither. But then by surprise, he was in court on June the 22nd.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. So so June the 22nd, and then you end up back in court on I'm sorry, on June the 22nd, you were with Magistrate Ray White. On July the 6th, you are back in front of the juvenile court judge, Travis Lampley, and this is on the truancy case, right?
Yes.
All right. And so what happened when you go in front and when you're supposed to have a hearing, you're supposed to have a trial on this truancy misdemeanor. Do you get to have a trial? Can you tell us about what happened there?
That day was unexpected, even from our private paid attorney Michael Hollins. He really like dropped the ball on this one. When I arrived to court with my family advocate, who's not present today, but both of you all have spoken with Mrs. Cheryl Huff, and we walked into the lobby, we see the attorney's cars in the parking lot, but we don't see the DA or my attorney. And court's supposed to start at 1. I think they come out like 1:30, 1:45, laughing, talking, and playing. And then my attorney is trying to get me to sign some paper. And I told him, no, can you explain it to me? And he was like, if you go before the judge, you're going to jail. He kept threatening me with jail. And I was like, how are you my attorney, but you're threatening me with jail? You're trying to let me sign something under duress, and I don't want to sign that. And so Mrs. Cheryl was even asking him, hey, what's going on? So the attorney Hollins went back and talked to John Cameron, is the assistant prosecutor DA for the truancy case. And he was like, they're offering for me to follow the PERM plan, but a PERM plan didn't exist to my knowledge because they didn't give me one. And so we never had a ratification here. So I'm like, how can I comply with something that I've never had a chance to review, to discuss? And if it's about my family, my kids are my family, we're not involved. It's just what DCS wants me to do. And the attorney, Michael Hollins, was like, no, you can't ask questions. It can't be reasonable. And he was very belligerent and trying to get me to sign this paper. And then he said, we're taking it off the table. You're going to jail. We're going to court. Let's go in here. And Mrs. Cheryl, if she wasn't there that day, she was like, no, stop, or whatever. And you can't offer her something. And then you, her attorney, and you're trying to send her in there because you're telling her the judge doesn't like you. And if you go before the judge, you're going to be jailed. So that day was very chaotic.
But ultimately, did you get a trial where you were able to explain to the judge the situation about your mother being sick and putting the kids in online school? Were you able to explain that to him?
No, ma'am. I went before Judge Lampley, and the whole time I appear before this judge, he smiles and grins like a Cheshire cat, like the Grinch, like he's making fun of me, like they're getting a joy out of seeing me suffering. Because even now, I've lost 54 pounds through the whole ordeal. When they first seen me in March, I had more weight on me. My hair is starting to come out and shed. I'm getting bald around here, so that's why too I'm wearing a hat. And so they're seeing me physically changing, and DCS want to allege that I do drugs, which I don't. And the judge basically was like, Miss Johnson, don't send her kids to school. Like I should be jailed because I don't send my kids to school. But he knows none of what the emails that I have proof, the enrolling a child in private school, my mom's hospital bill, or her records. We had witnesses that were ready to testify for both the DN and truancy case. The judge or the magistrate didn't care what any of us had to say. They just keep taking it upon themselves to only listen to DCS. Mm-hmm. And then they used my 16-year-old son against me in a DN case. That's their only defense, is a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, some of the he made some allegations, some pretty crazy allegations. And do you think he made those, or do you know why? And this is not the only time, I've had this situation. I mean, my infamous case with Miss Hancock all started with a teenage boy who was decided to be a drug dealer in the driveway, and she put her foot down and said no, and then he told her she would go to jail and never see her kids again. And then he did it, right? He did it. He
Mhm.
used DCS. So can I, and I don't want to push you too far personally if you don't want to talk about it, but is there anything you can tell us about that with your son that would kind of help us understand that situation a little better?
I guess DCS is promising him things like he's told his 14-year-old sister, and he said it. I don't want to go back home because I'm having fun. Like they're
Mm.
promising him money, they're promising him a car, and I'm like, I don't think they're going to give you a car. They're promising him stuff like to let him have his way. With me, he has structure, he has rules. A 16-year-old can't be out on the streets anytime, day or night. You're not going to have people coming in our house hanging out, teenagers, because we all know how teenagers can be without adult supervision. So, me laying out ground rules, but at the foster parents' house, allegedly, and per my 14-year-old that was there, they're letting him do whatever he wants. They're letting him go out, walk the streets, hang out with his friends, and that's what he loves. So, DCS found their weak link to manipulate, and it's him.
Well, let me tell you something else about that too. So he just turned 17, right? In July. Is that
July
right?
the 7th,
All
yes.
right. So there's this other thing with DCS a lot of people don't understand. It's called the Chafee program, and what they actually want children to age out of foster care because of certain benefits they get, and they use I want people to understand this. So I'm going to talk about this just a moment generally, if you'll just bear with me. So I have had cases where a child who was basically going to turn 18 in 2 days. I have had DCS tell that child, if you will just agree to go in foster care, even though you're almost 18, as soon as you turn 18, you're going to get free college, you're going to get a monthly allowance check, you're going to, get medical benefits until you're 24, 25, and you're going to get all these things if you're in foster care when you age out. And so they actually I have seen them attack children at 17 years old to entice them to stay in foster care. Now, I mean, I've raised kids. I've had 17-year-old kids, okay, right? 16, 17. It's so hard to parent anyway because you're trying to deal with them growing up and authority and freedom and independence and dependence all at the same time. And so they throw these out there, these promises to them. And so it would not surprise me at all if they offered him a car. It just wouldn't, because they give them a monthly stipend that I have seen as high as like $400 a month. Well, you can make a car payment, right, with $400 a month. And they now have a program as well where to the foster parents, they will allow the foster parents to participate in what's called extended foster care, and now they can be foster parents over this child after they turn 18, basically just giving them a place to lay their head at night because they're not required by law to provide them with any food or shelter or anything, right? I mean, because they're 18, but they will pay these foster parents, continue to pay them. And I just printed off the per diem rates that they're doing in Tennessee now, as long as that child stays in foster care. So I would not be shocked. And so, with your daughter, I'm very concerned about your daughter, of them not being able to give you information about her. I mean, I am so concerned about her. So, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about your daughter?
I know that on April 11th, when I saw her in our home with the first caseworker, Shanine Jackson, she hugged me so tight and she said, Mommy, I'm so scared. And she said her brother, the 16-year-old at the time, she said they let him do whatever he wants. He tell me he doesn't care what happens to me or the baby because he's going to be
Oops, you're breaking up on us just a little. Hang
aging.
on,
Now
let's let your computer
trying to
catch up just a little
promise
bit. So,
him
Cynthia, why don't you hold
resources.
on just a second, Brenda? We'll come back
And
to that.
so
Let's let
the
your,
court date on June the 22nd,
I don't think she
magistrate
can hear.
at
yeah. Oops.
Brenda, 1 second.
Can you hear us?
Okay. It was muted.
Yes, because you had a really bad lag and your computer kept breaking up really bad, or your phone. And so Grace muted to try to pause that bad connection for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, so hold on just a second. Let your computer catch up a little bit. Let's let Cynthia give us some input here, and we're going to come back to your daughter because I am very concerned about that. But Cynthia, based upon what you've heard today, um, do you have some comments or some feedback you would like to
Absolutely.
add?
Absolutely. I've been taking notes. I have also heard, I believe you called it the Chafee program, where the children age out of foster care and they do get specific benefits. Um, Especially the college one is a big one. And it blows my mind. Again, it shouldn't, but I know that I believe the social workers or whoever is involved in that case also gets specific incentives. The next one that kind of threw me for a loop during my case was the whole homeschooling thing. I've homeschooled my kids the majority of their school year, and also did like a charter program where it's not me just buying books and trying to homeschool. I'm actually going through a whole program where there's an educational specialist. Um, they get to go in for extracurricular schooling, or enrichment classes, they're called. And when my case closed, I was told that I was not allowed to return to homeschooling and could not be part of these programs. And so I did keep my kids in school for the remainder of that year, but I did put them back in a charter program because it's what is best. It was what was best for my children at those ages. It's where they've accelerated the most, it's where they've learned the most, and they've always tested at least 2 years ahead of their school year. So, but the CPS social worker trying to have complete control over our lives and tell us what we can and can't do. It's absolutely insane. And then the other questions I had, Connie, that, went along with what you were saying, was my most concern is for her daughter. And has she not, I know I asked you this when I had done the interview on my show, but has she not tried to reach out either, like by a cell phone or a friend's phone at school? Or do you know if she's been enrolled in school? Do you know anything, or is she literally in your knowledge missing?
I wouldn't say she's missing, but they're not telling me where she's at. They say it's for their safety. The guardian at Lim said it probably Friday. She believes it's best that I don't even have my kids on a CFTM meeting or a Zoom call. And I'm asking her why is she saying this, and she's going by her beliefs. So um, my daughter hasn't called. She has no way to contact me. I don't have a way of knowing where she's at.
Well, and from what you said, I mean, you're in Murfreesboro, and I know you and I are familiar with the geography around here, and Cynthia's not. But Nashville is Davidson County. That is the capital. The population of probably 750, 800,000 people now. Rutherford County is southeast of that county, and then I'm in Williamson County, which is directly south, and they're all pretty highly populated counties. But it's quite a distance from Rutherford County up to Nashville. I mean, it's depending on where you're going in Nashville, it's a good 45 minutes to an hour, especially with traffic. So she could be somewhere, and they told you somewhere in Nashville. So she's probably not even back in school around the kids that she knew, even in her school environment. Don't you think that's true, Brenda?
I know the last time, I can't recall the exact date or month, but they said they were testing out her being removed from the first foster home and they were going to bring her back around school. But I didn't know why they would bring her back if she was alleged in foster home abuse there. And then I told them I didn't feel comfortable. I made it known in the email. Why would you all send her back where she's saying the foster parents or the foster mom per se is abusing her and the baby? So I don't know where she's at today.
Wow. Oh, goodness. Okay, so we are coming up on an hour, and I do want to kind of keep our shows consolidated to about this time period. And we've covered all the way up to July, which is still a month ago. And but generally, there's been you haven't had any progress since you were in court on July the 6th, correct? I mean, you're not having visits with your kids. Has DCS still provided you any services?
They have not.
And do you even have a caseworker now?
No, both they're terminated. No,
Okay, so you mentioned a name of a caseworker you had before Brooke Moore. What was that name?
Shanine Jackson.
Shanine. Okay. And you think she was terminated as well?
I know she was terminated because at the time the foster mom texted my phone and told me that the first caseworker Shanine had been terminated, and it was like probably 3 or 4 days after the abuse was reported.
Okay. And then you mentioned also Christina Moody.
The regional director
She's
for
the
the
regional director, and you reached out to her as well. Did you actually talk to her?
yes, ma'am. I talked to her on March the 6th, the morning of March the 6th. I was trying to file a complaint against Chelsea Smith.
All right. Now, have you since then had any email communication or anything with her?
Only once when they tried to have a CFTM meeting, and I think she was emailing to let us know Shanine Jackson was going to be late for that meeting. And after that, when I tried to contact them about anything, no progress in my case, no resources, nobody doing anything, nobody contact me back. Art Dickens,
Well,
Christina
I'm going to
Moody.
say to wrap this up, I mean, there are clearly compliance issues with Title IV. There's also just compliance issues with their own policies. And I have recommended to people filing complaints directly with the commissioner's office as well as with the General Assembly members, like whoever your state rep and state senator are. I have even at times delivered those complaints to the governor's office. And, it takes a minute, not to, I mean, you put so much work into this already, but I mean, it takes a little bit of a minute to kind of put it together. But based upon the conversations that you and I have already had, we've already got a list of like all the people involved. I see we need to add a couple people to it and a couple events that are not in your timeline about the other conversations and stuff that you've had. But I mean, clearly from everything I've reviewed, there's a compliance issue with the failure to provide the 72-hour hearing. And that's partly because of the incompetence of the attorney that they appointed you at the last minute. And then, there's still the issue with the police department. And I think, do you know who the police officer is that arrested you?
It was Officer Morris.
Officer who?
Morris, Morris.
And you need to get a copy of the arrest report. Okay. You don't know what his first name is?
No, ma'am.
What is he Murfreesboro City Police or is he county?
The city, I believe.
City?
Hmm.
Are you in city limits in Murfreesboro?
I never thought about that. I'm not sure. It's embarrassing to say, Cuddy. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, you can usually tell a difference between their cars, but
Um,
however, Rutherford County is kind of a weird thing. I've had city and county cross jurisdictions before, so, but I'm going to recommend that you get that arrest report. We also have the compliance issues with the probable cause hearing that they did not give you the probable cause for the allegations in the complaint. They didn't do the least restrictive alternative. And they did not do contrary to the welfare of the child. They're using these form orders that they are just filling in the blanks and really not giving the parents proper notice. So there's a lot here. That I'm going to encourage you to continue to follow up with and press forward and get those DCS records as well. So, I would I will talk with you some more after today and I know you have some other things in mind you're going to start doing. So let's just keep pushing forward and never, never, never quit. Just your poor children. I don't know. We need to maybe get press or something involved at some point, but you have been sorely mistreated,
Hmm.
sorely mistreated. All
And
right.
maybe we could do an update also on what's happened, because I would love to be involved in following this.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we will close out for today. And Brenda, I'm sure we'll be following up with you. I mean, part of our goal here is to try to restore families and really expose what's going on so people can be better prepared. And I'll just ask you this question. Had you and I had a conversation when the children were removed on March the 4th, do you think that you would have been better prepared to face what you have been facing over the past 5 months?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. We'll talk about the press later. All right. Well, let's close out for today. Thank you so much.